On this week's Rural Reflections podcast, we talk to Dave from the road as he travels from Carrington up to northwest Minnesota. Also, old-time toys like Matchbox toys. All of that on the Rural Reflections podcast. Welcome to the Rural Reflections podcast. You've got Rural Reflections West in Dave Nelson out in Carrington, North Dakota, and Rural Reflections East, myself, Grant Nelson, here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Now, Dave, almost none of what I just said is accurate this morning because I'm not at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. I'm at home, and you're not in Carrington either. You're on the way here, and we're actually doing this podcast from the road today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never done it before like this, but I'm definitely not in Carrington right now. I've traveled across pretty much all of eastern North Dakota already, and I'm ready to head into Minnesota doing a little bit of Memorial Day cemetery detail.
All right. Well, now, tell me a little bit about what you've seen this morning. You started out in central North Dakota, and you're working your way east. And I think Carrington's always an interesting area because it kind of had that crossover from dryland farming to maybe what we're more familiar with here in Minnesota. So tell me a little bit about what you've seen as far as field conditions and that sort of thing.
Well, I guess from the time I left Carrington until I've gotten here, it's nothing but improved along the whole way. Probably the first 30 miles are fairly similar to Carrington conditions where it was so dry nothing really came up, and then a lot of people waited extra long for beans and so on because they were hoping to get some moisture to get them up. And then I don't know where the frost line was exactly, but we had a pretty hard frost the other night. So Carrington area doesn't look very good at all, the crops that are up, but, you know, they could improve with a little bit of rain. But the further I went, I started seeing water in the ditches, fields that were kind of freshly washed off, a lot of wheat or barley or wheat and barley that had a very nice thick stand to it, and is probably in the close to 7 inches high, 6-7 inches high. I saw rye in our side of things closer to Carrington, heading out, and I would say about half as tall as I expect rye to be when it's heading. So it's gotten better the further east I've gone, and looks like there's a considerable amount more moisture. The ditches kind of tell the story, the grass in the ditches, and it's thick and lush for much of the way once I get 30 to 40 miles east of Carrington.
Well, the further you go east, you're going to notice it just stays. It'll either be real nice and green, or else you might even see some crop that has gotten flooded out. Because, of course, in that area along the Red River, they had quite a bit of rain here just in the past. And I talked to somebody this morning when I was into Thief River Falls, and there had been lightning and thunder and rain up in the northern part of Minnesota. But really where we're at right here, not a tremendous amount of rain. I mean, probably if you take the last 2 weeks into account, and I put every little offering of 5 100ths and a tenth, and then we had one big splash of over a tenth or 3/10 of an inch of rain, I'd say we haven't had more cumulatively than probably a half inch to maybe 6/10. And some of that's came at like 500ths at a time. So around our area right here, I've seen quite a few fields that really haven't even shown anything above ground yet. I mean, maybe they've germinated down underneath, but they haven't popped through the ground yet. And pasture conditions around here are a little bit grim right now. Of course, the alfalfa with the better root system, that's showing a little bit, but not really much more than that. And actually the grass and our pasture here has come to a standstill, and it's starting to get that look where it's just kind of almost going backwards a little bit. So we could use some rain here. Now, as far as developments, are you going to get as far as Thief River Falls today?
Yeah.
Okay. When you get to Thief River Falls, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much more development is going on there. I mean, not just new buildings or that sort of thing, but old buildings that are being remodeled and occupied. Even some like the old Dean Foods building that I kind of thought to myself, boy, that's going to be a hard fit. Well, the Pomps Tire Service is going in there, so there's a lot of work going on there, and there's several other buildings that are being remodeled now and put into service where they've just been sitting empty for quite a while. But I know out in Carrington, you've also got some development there. Matter of fact, a pretty large development that you're involved with.
Yeah, for our area, it's quite large. I'm sure it'll be the biggest project for this year in town anyway, but High Plains Equipment is building a new building, and they have started the earthwork. They took off about, I don't know, a small mountain of black dirt off the top of the site, and now they're trying to fill it back up with clay, which it's taking them a lot longer to get the clay in there than it did to get the black dirt out, but it's building up little by little, and hopefully they are going to be ready to pour cement in July and get the floor and the utilities and all that stuff ready in July, so they can start with putting some steel on 1st of August. So
now,
we'll see how that timetable goes, but I think for right now they're doing pretty good because it's dry and they're not having much for rain delays.
When we say High Plains Equipment, now we're talking about the Case IH dealership in Carrington. Can you tell me just a little bit about the size of the building and kind of the scope of what you're looking at there?
It's about 40,000 square feet, and it's going to encompass a shop and parts and some warehousing area for parts, all in one building. It's awesome as compared to anything I've ever been around, and everything that I work in right now, you could put it inside of the building and have lots of room yet. So it's going to be a real big change for me.
Yeah. You're not going to have room there for a coffee shop, are you?
You know, actually, there's a meeting room and a lobby area. So, yeah, there'll be coffee because there's a customer lobby, and there's a place for vending machines and coffee and all that. So.
Okay. Well, that's what we're doing right now. We're doing a little coffee talk on the Rural Reflections podcast. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about old toys. Now, of course, you would think right away, they're going to talk about old toy tractors. No, we're not going to. We're going to talk about Hot Wheels, model trains, all that sort of thing. Take a quick break. We'll be back. This is the Rural Reflections podcast. Model trains, all that sort of thing. Take a quick break. We'll be back. This is the Rural Reflections podcast. Model trains, all that sort of thing. Take a quick break. We'll be back. This is the Rural Reflections podcast. Welcome back to the Rural Reflections podcast. We've got two Rural Reflections East going on. As Dave is parked right now, but on his way eastbound to Minnesota from Carrington, North Dakota. Dave, in the second half of the podcast, I'd like to talk about a little bit about Hot Wheels and that sort of thing. Now, this just came up the other day. We were watching TV, and they had kind of a retro Hot Wheels set up. And I remember those. I mean, you had the track, you had the little plastic clamp that clamped to a table, and then you could let your cars go down, and then they do the loop-the-loop. And my word, that was an awful lot of fun. I mean, do you remember doing that?
Well, I remember watching it. I didn't really get too involved in the Hot Wheels stuff myself, but I remember you guys having Hot Wheels sets, and I know it was cool to watch, and they'd go around that little loop thing. It almost pulled the track right out of the base that it was mounted to, but they come around and then it'd shoot off and go. So they were cool. Actually, my grandkids are still playing with Hot Wheels cars that I'm sure my son had, and Grandma seems to have an affection for Hot Wheels cars because she must have 100 of them herself. So.
Well, I remember that too when it did the loop-de-loop. The centrifugal force, you're right, it would pull it almost off the ground. They had a lot, those Hot Wheels cars, they were pretty heavy. And when they came down there and went up and over the top, you could tell it would deform the loop a little bit and lift it off the ground almost sometimes. Now, you gave Daryl and I a really cool Hot Wheels type of race set. Now, it was made for Hot Wheels size, but it was a little bit more active as far as driving the vehicles around the track. It had like a T shift for two people, and when you pulled it down, a little lever arm would come out of the base of the race set, almost looked like a pinball paddle, and it would come out, and if you timed it perfect, you could kind of grab the Hot Wheels car and give it a boost. I mean, if you did it right, it would go up and over an elevated track on an angle, and you could really get some speed out of that. That was a fantastic little track because it required a bit of skill to make it work, but it was if you got it, if you didn't do it right, if you hit it too hard right away, it would pop the car off. But if you actually just did it just right, it would be amazing how fast that car would go around the top. And I think we had an awful lot of fun with that. And that was a good thing to spend some time with Hot Wheels also.
You know, those things are cool when they get the kids involved. Mary has the Hot Wheels, it's a garage, and you actually drive the car in, and then there's an elevator for the car, take it up to the top floor, where there's all the garage stuff, and then there's a car wash in there. And there's actually water stored in there and a little pump button that you can put on. And there's actually soap there. And the grandkids make such a unbelievable mess with that when they have it. And they play and play and play with it because cars got to come in, go up the elevator, has to go around a little curved path down, and it ends up in the car wash. And then the car wash, it even has those little things hanging there that dry it off or wipe it off when it goes out. And they play and play and play with that.
You know, that's pretty involved. But model trains are the same way. I mean, you can make them as involved as you want. I remember I had a beautiful little model train set when I was probably 9 or 10. It seems like all the good stuff really happens to you around that age of 9 to 11. That's when the good stuff really happens. And one of those things that happened was getting a model train. I've always enjoyed that. I didn't get too involved with it, but there's something just magical about being able to have that little transformer and be able to turn the switch up and down as you go along, and then see the control that you have over the train. And I even liked all the heat that built up on the control because it kind of felt good on your hand. But trains are like that too.
You know, I was introduced to trains by our cousin Brian Schlien, and he had quite a setup. And then later on, Steve and I used to go in the basement of the Wilson Sporting Goods in Thief River, okay. And they had, I think, 4 setups down there. They had trains and they had race cars. And you could, at that time, and this is a long time ago, but you could play for an hour for a quarter on a train set. And, man, you could really make a buck go a ways because once a month or so, we'd go into town with Mom and Dad, and they would turn us loose with $1, and we could go to Woolworths, and we could get a pop. You could go to the matinee movie if it was on, and I think they were 15 cents or something like that for a matinee. And you could go there and probably get a pop for another 15 cents. And we could spread $1 around pretty much all afternoon and go running trains, race cars, go to a movie, and get a pop. It was kind of a good thing, good fun thing to do on Saturday for a kid.
I'll tell you what, it'd be a good fun thing to do for the 50 plus group also, of which, of course, we're both part of. That sounds really fun, especially the trains and race cars in the basement of Wilson Brothers. That sounds like an awful good time. Now, talking a little bit about old toys, I'm gonna cross the line here. We got to talk a little bit about old toy tractors. Pedal tractors are something that have made their way even onto a lot of area county fairs as they do a pedal tractor pull. But I know you've always been into pedal tractors too, even non-pulling type, just the regular commercially available ones.
Well, yeah, we bought one for Ryan when he was little. We bought a used one, and the lady that sold it to us has come and asked for it back, if she could buy it back, several times. And now it's beyond that. I don't know if she's even alive anymore, to tell you the truth. But anyway, that was kind of the first thing. And of course, guess who was interested in that even more so is Mary. So we had to have pedal tractors for the kids when they come to visit. And we have an electric tractor for the kids when they come also. But now, of course, they've kind of grown out of them. But I have one pedal tractor that someday I would really like to score one of, and that's a 450 International. But they are way out of my budget. I mean, you have these old tractors that probably sold for $50 new or less, and they're $1,200 to $1,500 now, and getting hard to find because they've been really hoarded by certain collectors and so on. But maybe someday I'll have a 450 to sit around somewhere.
So we're basically, and I'm not talking a nice remodeled 450, but I mean a stock 450 that probably needs a little bit of work and has some more than a little wear and tear on it. The difference between that and the toy tractor, I mean, that the X and the Y axis are going to meet pretty soon, where they're equal in value.
Well, I would guess if you find a 450 pedal tractor in need of fairly substantial repair, it'll bring $400 to $500.
Okay.
And probably a 450 tractor that's in need of substantial repair, you could probably buy that for $500 to $1,000. But as soon as they're fixed up a little bit, or especially an original that's in original running condition yet and so on, the price just goes crazy on them.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Dave, I suppose we better let you back on the road. Thank you for taking time out and calling in on the long three-day holiday weekend. Anything else for us before I let you go?
No, I guess not. I'm just going to keep on my same old train of thought. I'm looking for rain. We want some rain.
We could use it too. Thanks very much. There he is, my brother Dave, out in Carrington on the way eastbound. I'm Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio, actually up in one of our, in the studio that we have at home. And this is the Rural Reflections Podcast.